Have you ever watched someone make a giant and detailed Star Wars build online and think to yourself, I could never do that? Because same. In this video, I'm going to show you how an average LEGO fan like me builds a new MOC. Last year, when I started this channel, I made a Kashyyyk MOC that was based off the original LEGO Star Wars Complete Saga the video game. To celebrate its 1-year anniversary, I want to build a small chunk of this iconic battle scene. Ever since I got the Endor speeder chase earlier this year, I've had a blast building on its diorama base. So first off, I'm going to start with a blank one. Along with this base, I'm also going to pull out a figure from my rare display case, which is the 41st Legion clone from 2005. This guy came out in the rare Wookiee Catamaran set, and I think he'll add a great classic Kashyyyk vibe to the build. Speaking of classic Kashyyyk, it wouldn't be without this Wookiee warrior, which is one of my favorite Wookiee minifigures ever. To make the battle scene more realistic, I'm going to add 2 droids, but I gave them their classic 2005 blasters and backpacks that make them more realistic to the game that they're based off of. Picking out a cool lineup of figures that gets you excited is a great way to be inspired, to get ideas for the build, and to be motivated to finish it. Now that I decided the 4 figures I'm going to use in this battle scene, I'll start pulling out pieces that I know I'm going to use. For example, I know I'm going to use these trans blue pieces to make a nice water feature, and this big bag of gray pieces to make a rock that I have in mind. It wouldn't be a Kashyyyk scene if there wasn't a giant tree somewhere, so I'm going to use these brown pieces to make one that's fallen over. I'm mostly going to focus on the jungle aspect of Kashyyyk, so I'll be pulling out a lot of dark green plates, slopes, and tiles to lay across the floor. Finally, to finish off the build, I'm going to use some green studs and green brush pieces mixed with brown tiles to give it the last bit of detail it needs. Whenever starting a new MOC, I always try to think of a couple things I'm going to build ahead of time, so that way I can go through my pieces, pick out the ones I need, and have them ready on hand. To start out, I'm going to dump out my pieces, filter through the dark green plates, and brainstorm where I want them to go. I'm leaving space for where I want the stream of water to go, but after placing everything down, I realized that there was a problem. In order to get the effect that I want with my trans blue tiles, I need to build a plate higher, so I'll be using these dark blue plates to get that done. After I finished placing those blue plates down, I started to outline the stream with my trans blue tiles so I could lay the green plates back on top. This design of putting plates on top of tiles is an easy way to give your build a little more depth. Buying all of these trans blue tiles at my local pick-a-brick wall was one of the best decisions I've ever made because adding them into any LEGO build is always super satisfying. And then for the areas that I couldn't fit the 1x2 tiles in, I just put in these clear blue studs that filled the gaps. I really like how this looks, and I think the blue popping off of that dark green looks great. Now that the stream's done, I'm going to build the next big section of this MOC, which is the big rock. This is going to be a platform where the Wookiee warrior can raise his spear over the droids and go into battle. I'm going to start this building process the same way I do everything else, which is by pouring out all of my pieces and scavenging for ones that I think I can use. One thing that I've learned about building your own LEGO creation is that when you see a piece that you think you'll need in the future, chances are you will need it in the future, so you should set it aside instead of looking past it. At this point, I pretty much know what pieces I'm looking for when building a giant rock, like these slope pieces or some snot bricks so you can build on the side. Now having a pile of bricks that I can specifically use for this rock build, I'm just starting to put things together and see what works. This is the first rock formation that I made, and it's okay looking, but it's not what I had in mind. It's a little small, and at an angle I don't think it would look as good as I want. But because it's LEGO, I took it apart and kept brainstorming to see what else I could come up with. Wouldn't you know, after a couple more minutes, I came out with something that I really liked. As you can see, I primarily used snot techniques and added plates on top to hold everything together. I think the shape turned out looking great, and I can add a Wookiee minifigure on there without it overshadowing the build. The only problem with this rock was there was 8 anti-studs at the bottom where I only needed 1 so I could place it down and rotate it to the angle I wanted. After modifying it a bit more, I found the perfect angle for it, laid down the tiles and stud, and stuck it to the base. With the Wookiee warrior on top, I think that this looks perfect, and it's exactly what I had in mind for this MOC. Now that the big rock is built, I'm going to go into the third and final section of the MOC, which is the giant fallen tree. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm going to pour out my parts, look for pieces that look cool to me, and then go from there. MOC building should be fun, and this is one of the best parts to me. I love the challenge of looking at a couple pieces that you like and then trying to fit them together to make something else that you like even more. So let's see what I can do. Whenever dealing with the old brown pieces from Lego, you have to be super careful because you can break them really easily. Because this tree is already fallen over, I'm not going to add detail on the bottom, but only on the sides and the top. This allowed me to experiment with more snot techniques, and I actually ended up building a couple different sections that fit together really nicely. Building trees and rocks in Lego are some of my favorite things to make because you literally can't do it wrong. The only thing that really matters is if it looks good to you, and in this case, I really like how this tree stump turned out. I didn't have as many green or brown tiles as I'd like, so instead of placing those underneath it, I just angled some cheese slopes against the wall of this object, and that secured it into place pretty tightly. So yes, there are just studs underneath it, and no, it is not held in by any clutch power, but I like the way it looks, and this angle turned out really cool. I'm a big fan of using cheese slopes to lock in bigger builds over studs because sometimes I just don't have enough tiles. I think that can be something that discourages a lot of new mock builders because most of the time we don't have the tiles to make a build look finished off. A lot of the big builds nowadays are super smooth, and it makes it really scary to even try building something because most of the time we're gonna have studs showing. I want to let you know that that is okay. As long as you are proud of what you're doing, that's all that matters. To give the tree a little more life, I added some brush on top and a couple of these branches to the sides. I had a couple of these green shield pieces laying around from the indoor speeder chase, so I decided to place these around the tree because I think it adds a little more depth next to that stream of water. They're also angled at the top, which works really well with how the tree is positioned. All in all, I'm pretty happy with how this main build came out, and it's looking really nice with all the colors incorporated together. I really like where this mock is headed, but I'm gonna use a couple of my smaller pieces to add some more detail around the ground just to make it look a little more lived in. I don't know how these mossy green plates are going to incorporate with the dark green and brown tiles, but we're going to see. This has to be one of my favorite parts of the building process because you get to just stick plates down and see how they look in relation to everything else. For example, I didn't like the way these mossy plates looked, so I just used my blue brick separator and took them off. With those out of the way, I wanted to place my figures down and see what everything looks like together. Sometimes it's easy to get discouraged at a build because it may look too simple to you, but once you add a couple minifigures, it usually livens things right up. In this case, with the figures on, I could tell something was missing, so I decided to add these grass pieces that I also bought from my pick-a-brick wall at my local Lego store. I knew these were the final pieces to add to make the mock complete. After 2 days of building and a total of 5 hours, I was done with my average Lego Star Wars mock. It's not giant, but it's not small, and it's something that I'm proud of and I pushed my limits to make. I'm a huge fan with how this turned out because it's exactly what I had in mind when I started building. Not only that, but I love the action scene that I made with the 2 droids hunting the Wookiee and 41st Legion Trooper. I think what I like most about this build are the colors that I used. Even though it was a lot of work, I'm so happy I placed those blue plates underneath the trans blue tiles because it makes the water pop next to the dark green and brown. Here it is next to the other mock I made using the same base. Let me know which one you like more and why in the comments below. Building mocks like these reminds me why I love Lego Star Wars so much. I just love how the minifigures can add so much detail in such a small space. If you learned anything from this video, it's that you should go ahead and start building a mock. The hardest part is picking up your pieces and starting. Grab some minifigures that you love, a couple pieces that you have laying around, and create a scene that's in your head or copied off from a movie. As long as you're happy with the final product, that is what Lego is all about. Have fun building and get creative.